so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads. Welcome to a very special episode dedicated to none other than you, the P-heads themselves. I am your P-head enthusiast and hostess for the day, Alexa Hauser. I have been blessed to have the experience of helping out with Positive Head social media for the better part of a year. And through my digital interactions, I began to realize, as did Brandon, that we have some incredible beings listening to this show who are taking the information that Brandon puts out through the podcast and using it to transform their lives and create wonderful things. You listeners are all a huge, huge part of the life force that propels this show forward through time and space, and we think it's time to bring forth some of you beautiful reflections and delve a little deeper into this collection of energy that is the Positive Head community. So as we shine the spotlight on our listeners, what we'll have them do is share their stories of how they attracted Positive Head into their life, the transformation it's facilitated for them, and what they're focused on creating now that they're in a more positive headspace. Also, this episode of the Positive Head podcast is being brought to you thanks to the support of Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. Hello, all you positive heads. On this week's P-Head Posse episode, our guest is Positive Head listener Leah Liebler. Leah is an artist, mystic, Reiki Master, moon circle facilitator, and forest therapy guide who creates metaphysical tools and adornments through channeled inspiration. It is her soul's mission to help individuals tap into the healing powers of nature and to aid in repairing the relationship between humans and the natural world. Hi, Leah. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Alexa. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're here too. It's, just reading your intros getting me all excited because I just got back from Burning Man a few days ago, and I'm just right now all about, the relationship between humans and the natural world. It's been a topic on my mind, so I'm really excited to dig into everything you're about. But before we do that, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? Tell us a bit of your story, maybe of your awakening and how you got to this point.
Yeah, so I've definitely always considered myself a mystic in the sense that from the time I was about 5 years old, I can remember just pondering about the nature of reality and analyzing what life means. And what I was intuitively picking up was very different than what I was being taught externally. So I grew up in a big Christian family. I was one of the youngest of 7 children. And my parents were really unique in the sense that they like to do things differently than most people. So for the younger years of my life, I was raised strictly in a church setting. I didn't have much exposure to the outside world, and my parents really believed that the world was an evil place, and they tried to keep all of their children away from it. And they're also alternative in the sense where I felt like we never really fit in at church. So we were really judged and looked down by most people that I was surrounded by. And I spent most of my life feeling like I never fit in anywhere. And I dealt with a lot of, inner conflict and traumas throughout my life that really caused me to take on this perception that I was the victim of my own circumstances. And I allowed people to control and make decisions for me. And I just kind of floated through my life feeling like I had no control. And I definitely gave away my power to whoever wanted it. I also had this huge fear of death that stuck with me my whole life up until finding the podcast. And I couldn't sleep for years of my childhood because I was so fearful that God would come back and take my whole family to heaven and leave me behind. and the heaven and hell that was promised me as a potential for life after death, both options that I didn't really vibe with. As a little kid, the thought of worshiping this big man with a beard in the sky for eternity didn't sound very fun, and neither did rotting in hell. So it wasn't really up until I went to college that I started exploring how to live a life that wasn't wrapped around this huge fear of death. So being on my own, I explored many different types of belief systems and religions, and finding Buddhism and paganism were both big catalysts for my growth, and they felt like a much better fit and resonated with me, and I chose to dive in. But this fear of death still lingered over me, and it was like my head told me not to fear God, but my heart told me another. And it wasn't until I found this podcast that the fear of death really started to shift and then fade away, which really made room in my life for so many amazing miracles to unfold. And I'm still learning all these new areas within myself that continue to bloom.
Wow. That's amazing. And actually, so I resonate so deeply with the fear of death, because while you were describing that, I was remembering. And it's funny because I don't really think about this anymore, but I just remembering years and years of being up late at night, crying, asking my parents to explain death to me one more time, and what happens after that, and what happens after that. And just this, and it really is such a weight, right, off your shoulders once you understand that there is no death, because the fear, the belief that things could possibly end, it not only is it like devastating to think that you don't have control over that and that your time is limited, but also exactly that like your time is limited, and it makes you feel like you have to do things, you have to get things done. It just puts so much pressure on our lives. So yeah, what was your how did this podcast help you understand, like, what was your process of understanding that there was no death or releasing that fear?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like with anything, it was multiple different steps and processes along the way. But the way that Brandon is able to, he repeats things and reiterates like the same messages and over again, really like hearing it and listening to it, and that like traveling and resonating within my soul has just slowly over time shifted things. And I even remember it was like 2 years ago at this point, I was telling a friend how far I've come and all the healing that I've done. And I just don't think that I'll ever be able to truly overcome this fear of death. So it was like, even 2 years ago, I believed that I would always live with this fear. And I can honestly say that it's completely gone, and it's one of the most freeing feelings in the entire world. Definitely just understanding that, there is no death, and like understanding that time isn't really linear, like we all believe as humans. And reincarnation is a big thing that I had trouble processing for a long time, especially because of my upbringing. But now it's just like, it makes so much sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, it seems like you said that's led to you discovering all of these other amazing things. Like, I'm assuming you're referencing the things we were talking about in your intro. Like you said, you're a Reiki Master, a moon circle facilitator, which love moon circles, and forest therapy guide. So do you want to explain like what is a forest therapy guide?
Yeah, so I'm still in the beginning phases of learning all about it, but it was really something that started happening to me organically. I knew nothing about it, and for a while believed that I had kind of created it. I left a corporate job about 3 years ago, and I started on this journey of happiness. I didn't really care what people thought of it or what I was going to be doing, as long as it made me happy. And I have had some farming experience in my past and never thought I would go back to it after going to college. But then living in a city, I just craved that like natural outside world, being around animals, being around plants and produce. So I had an idea that I wanted to get back into a farm setting. And so I left the corporate job and I applied to this summer position on a farm. and it was teaching a children's program for 8 and 9-year-olds. And the program was left up to me to design and decide to take the kids into the forest every day and learn how to connect with nature. And I was teaching children how to stay present, and we would all just kind of have moments of silence, and we would look for natural treasures. So like, beautiful sticks or leaves or feathers or little objects that have gotten lost in the forest. And we would go out and collect, and then we would create art projects with it. And that idea really just came to me out of nowhere. And it was really a beautiful experience. And little did I know it would change my life forever. So, again, that just kind of came to me organically. And then a few years later, I found out that forest therapy is actually something that, is trademarked and practiced and designed, and you can be certified in it. And it comes from the idea that you are not the therapist, the forest is the therapist, and you are just the guide. So you guide people into connecting with the forest and to step out of mental chatter your day to day and things that you're dealing with, and just step into this natural world. And forest therapy, there's this idea that you create a threshold. So almost like if you've ever walked a labyrinth, when you step in, you leave your old life behind and you step into this exploration of whatever this new container that you're in. And there's various different things that you do. It's really not about the destination. It's more about just the experience and connecting and really finding what the forest has to teach you. And every time you do it, it's something different. And it's not always something that can be easy for most people. It usually takes, multiple times to really figure out like how to truly disconnect from your mental chatter and starting to connect with the natural world. And trees have so much to teach people, and just laying in the ground, in the grass, like if you really sit there for a while, so much information can come to you.
It's so wild that like we're talking today because, well, first of all, that sounds amazing. And I want to experience that. Do you do that with, is forest therapy, like, is a forest therapy guide? Like, do you do this with an individual? Do you do this with groups? Like, how does that work? Like, how does the guiding work?
Yeah. So it's with both. So it's definitely something I'd like to move into doing it one-on-one. I believe that creates like a much more intimate setting, but it is typically done with groups. Okay. And I started doing it on my own with children. So I didn't even know that this was already something that was, designed. Now I'm aware of it, and I'm trying to learn more about, I guess, more of the details and how to be a better facilitator and guide to truly help people tap into the highest potential of what the forest and what nature can offer.
Yeah, because, well, two things pop up. One, especially as you were talking about the children in the forest, I've had this desire for the past few years, ever since I found out about it, to send my kids, when I do have kids, to forest school, because I heard about forest school, and which is essentially you drop your kids off at the redwood forest every day with the the teachers, the educators, and they use the forest as their school. And I just think that sounds incredible. But also, as I mentioned, I just got back from Burning Man a few days ago, and it was my second burn, and it's been really challenging to come back. It's been becoming more and more challenging as the days have gone on, because I feel like I'm kind of losing touch with Burning Man. And while Burning Man isn't, it is by no means a forest, it is a desert. So there's no, there's no plant life there, and but everything that you're talking about is everything I've been feeling so strongly since I left, of this need to reconnect with nature, to reconnect with the land, to reconnect with the outdoors. Because while I was there this time, it just truly hit me. I saw so clearly how we've all moved away from the land. We've moved away from nature. We've built all these walls up around ourselves, and understandably so. We wanted protection. We wanted to have our own spaces. But I suddenly started to realize how much that hurts us, how much it hurts our hearts, how much it hurts our souls, how closed off it makes us, how protective it makes us from other people and from, nature and who and what we are. And when we have, like you said, a container, right? Which Burning Man is certainly a container to just absolutely be, because there's no cell phone service. There's no technology really there. I mean, there's obviously there's music and there's generators and we use technology in certain ways, but truly it's just a week to give yourself permission to play and be and connect with other people. And I came out of there this time, and the past 3 days, all I can think, I'm like, I need to find a way to get back to community and to get back to nature. And all that's been going through my head is how can I go work on a farm? How maybe once a month I can I just need to find a way to reconnect. And I also had this strong desire. I was like, if people aren't going to go to Burning Man to experience this or to kind of reconnect with this understanding, I need to find a way to bring it to them. I need to find a way to facilitate this experience for them. And I think from what you're telling me about forest therapy, it sounds like another way to do that. It sounds like another way to open people back up and to get them back into the present moment and to get them back into connected with who and what we are and with each other, And so I think I'm really looking forward to learning more about that as you're talking about it. It's really interesting to me.
Yeah, and that's exactly. So I've never been to Burning Man, and it's actually something that I'm working on manifesting at the moment. I know many people are. This will be my second year now that I've wanted to go, and it just didn't work out for me too. But I know I'll make it there one day. Oh, yeah. But I have experienced similar festivals and retreats that are similar to that, where you step into this phase that doesn't even really feel like reality because people are so connected and you're connected to the land or whatever container that you're in. So I would definitely have to say that forest therapy is very similar to that. It's really creating this safe space to disconnect from reality in a sense, into the matrix, to the day to day, and to step into this really magical place that once you really get deep into the forest, it really messes with you in a way that it makes it hard to go back to living a mundane life in a four-walled house. Yeah. So I would definitely say that forest therapy, it really can act as a huge catalyst for creating that community, for connection, for clearing so much. Just being outside, so much of your energy gets cleared, and the wind in general, when you really touch in with the presence and the energy of the wind, it can be such a cleansing experience.
That's funny you bring that up, because it has popped into my mind several times, especially over the past year. I'm like, what is the wind? What is that? Because I it's so funny when you really think about it. It's there's this thing that's moving that none of us can see, but we all know it's the wind and we can feel it, right? And I constantly am thinking to myself, where is that even coming from? Because it has to. The wind is just constantly going, right? And I've also heard things about the wind, that the wind is symbolic, I think, of is it a cleansing thing? It's clearing things away. It clears things away. It's a constant clearing, or what is your take on that?
So something that is actually taught in forest therapy is the world around us, the wind, is really a reflection of the ocean. So it's very similar to the tide coming in and coming out, and it moves spores around, it moves seeds around. It really is a cleansing aspect to earth. So the ocean has water and the waves that does the same thing. It moves particles and creatures around, and the wind really acts as the same force, but on land.
Right. As above, so below. It's in the
right. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's really interesting. And it also gives then when you think about the wind patterns and the ocean patterns, right, it really illustrates that everything is always moving, that nothing stays the same. And also that there's an energy that runs through everything, right? Like it's constantly shuffling things around. Wow. That's awesome. What else? I'm just curious, like, is there anything else you've learned in forest therapy that you think the listeners would find interesting? Something similar to like the wind thing? I don't know, because I think that's so interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can share a bit about my own personal experience.
Yeah. Love that.
So a big catalyst for the project that I'm currently working on, which is called Cyclical in Nature. I've basically, through the forest, was channeling all this information that really I feel like was not coming from me. I had no previous knowledge to really take up any of the things that I've started working on. So being in the forest every day, it took me out of this whole other world that I was living in. And it definitely didn't happen overnight. It was a slow progression. And I almost didn't even realize it until looking back on it, how much it really had an effect on me. But I was getting messages and downloads from the trees and plants and birds. So I would just like sit and make eye contact with a hawk in the forest for what felt like eternity, but was probably only a few minutes. And the birds would just like, these messages would come through to me that definitely sounded like my own internal dialogue, but I knew wasn't coming from me. And I learned a lot about, my own personal power and strength and freedom and being gentle, but also being really kind and strong and powerful. And, I would find like a beautiful fallen tree branch in a patch of sun. And after picking it up, I would get this electric pulse, and this channeled message would come through to me that was like, you need to turn this stick into a healing wand and drill holes in the top and fill it with crystals and program it with the energy and tension that's coming through you. And then teach people how to use and direct the energy. So, this was something that when it hit me, I'm like, what? What does that even mean? Yeah. But I just decided to follow what I was getting. I could see this beautiful wand in my vision. So then I would collect that tree branch and I would take it home. And with the tools that I had, I would try to follow the message that I was given. And I was doing this slowly. And the same thing was also happening with feathers. So that same summer where all this was happening, I started getting all these messages I considered it like the universe really speaking to me through these feathers. And for a while, it was really out of control, where I would just get this knowing that if I turned the corner, if I left my house, I would find a feather. And it was down to the specifics too. It was like, I know I'm going to find a blue feather if I leave the house right now. And I would walk outside the house and I would find a blue feather. So when that was going on, I was starting to get these messages that I should create smudge fans for burning sage or Palo Santo. So then again, I was just follow these like channeled messages that I was getting through, and I ended up coming up with this collection of these healing wands and smudge feather fans that were all created from things that I found in the forest. And before that, I knew nothing about it. I didn't know that other people even knew what these were, and that other people were even making them themselves. So that was something that was really incredible for me to experience, was just by really disconnecting from my own issues, my own thoughts, my own cycling patterns, and truly just listening and observing really beautiful art came from it.
Yeah, see, that brings up like another thing, because as you're describing, first of all, that's amazing, and I have such a like visual as you're describing it. And it's again hitting on everything I've been thinking about over the past few days, like this strong desire to just go into nature and just be there and stay there and, live there in some form for a period of time, to really get clear, because that's another thing that I was realizing at Burning Man, that like nothing matters unless you're clear. Like the only thing that matters, the most important thing is being clear, because when you're clear, you can hear. Oh, that rhymes.
Yep.
When you're clear, you can
Yeah,
hear.
I love it.
Yes.
Yeah, no, clarity is the
Yeah. Wait, say that again.
I'm someone who deals with so much inner thinking and different like conflicting thoughts, and clarity has been to me so healing, because anytime I'm able to get clear, so much comes through to me. All the things that I've been wanting and desiring come through once I'm able to get into a state of clarity. And for me, nature is like, I say like nature is my prescription. It really, whenever I go into the forest, it's like a switch is being flipped. Like I no longer deal with certain things that I deal with when I'm not in the forest.
Exactly, because you give yourself that permission to switch off, right? And you like fully go there. And that's really my question to you. So for example, I live in Philadelphia, right? In the city of Philadelphia. And I'm actually really lucky because right across from my street, or right across from where I live, there's a giant park with so many trees. I mean, I probably live next to the greenest spot in the city of Philadelphia. It's beautiful. So many animals here. And it's just a beautiful.
I love Philly.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah.
one of my favorite.
Where do you live, by the way?
I live in Boston, so I also live in the city.
I've only been to Boston once, and it was on July 4th weekend a couple years ago, and I fell in love with it. And my partner was like, well, you're not really seeing it in its full swing. Like there's a lot of people here. And I was like, but it's so beautiful and quiet. And it was really pretty. But anyway, well, that's not too far. So that's awesome. But anyway, I live next to a very green spot, but you know, I'm in the city and I can feel the city. I can feel it buzzing all around. I can feel, I can hear, you know, or I can feel as soon as I come in here, it's kind of like, you know, it's a static, it's a noise. It's like a background noise. And you know, like what I've really been struggling with since coming back, especially from this last trip, is like, okay, well, I want to be disconnected in a way. Like I want to just, you know, be in my own space. Like you're talking about going into the forest and just disconnecting and giving yourself that permission. And that's how you get clear. But it's like, one, you know, what do you do if you're in a city? Like, how do you facilitate that? And two, how do you facilitate that with the technological demands of today? Because even if you don't have a job, right? Like, let's say you are just like, you are in a situation where you don't even need to report to anyone, right? You're just doing what you want. You still need to use your phone to connect with humans, because most of us don't live in like a community, like where you can just walk out your door and see your friends, right? You still need to use technology. So what would you say to people who, and I'm really speaking about myself here, to people who, you know, want to connect more with nature and want to immerse themselves and get clearer, but who are A, living in the city, and B, you know, have these technological demands in certain ways?
Yeah, so those are, you know, two big areas that I myself even struggle with. So technology can definitely be a force, but with anything, balance. So it's coming to an awareness and a realization that you really want to make this connection with nature, or it doesn't even have to be nature. It's, for me, I really think everyone finds healing in their own way. And for me, it was nature. And I know a lot of other people can definitely agree with that. But so it's that first, that like that want to have a connection. So if you really want to connect with the outside world, that means you have to leave behind the real world. And a lot of in our society, the real world can really be our devices. So it's learning how to turn that on and off. And, you know, our phones, technology, it is a great tool. It's how so many people are connected to each other, you know. But to realize that in order to connect with nature, it's important to turn that off, to put it on airplane mode, to keep your phone in the car, give yourself 10 minutes. Like that's not very long to disconnect from reality and connect with the natural world. But I would definitely say that it is important to find balance with connecting in 3D and online and with the natural world. And also with nature and living in the city, I struggled with that for a long time. So before I found this really beautiful connection with nature, I used to have the same thoughts. It's like, oh, I live in the city, so I can't just go into the forest because I live in the city. But what I have personally found, and speaking with other people, I know that other people have found this, that you can always find nature, like even in the city. Like you said, that beautiful park next to your house. Like there are parks, there are rivers. So I know for myself, like the Charles River is a very special place for me. I found this little hidden area that is really magical, and I'd like to believe that no one knows about it but me. And I go there and I just have really beautiful experiences. But it's off of a highway. So like if you're on the highway, you would never even know this little place existed. But I explored and I found it, or I like to think that maybe it found me. So I would say that if you, just like with anything, if you put the intention out there that wherever you are, you want to make a connection with nature, I do believe that nature will open up and you will find it. It's becoming more aware of it, and it comes into your reality, and you'll find a special spot even in the city where you can go and make that connection.
I love that. Yeah, that's very true. And that is very true as well about intention. You know, everything is about intention. And even as I was talking about, you know, the challenges, it's like I heard the little voice going, but you're, you know, just by continuously talking about like the challenge that is technology, right? That I'm making technology my challenge, and it's also a gift, and it's also a tool, and I can focus on it that way. So I think you're really right about the intention, just having the intention to connect in any way you can. And I think that's really important and valuable. So thank you for that. And what I know you mentioned a little while, you said you're working on a project. What was it called again?
Yeah, so the business is called Cyclical in Nature, and that really came through to me again in the forest.
Yeah.
I, without even planning to sell anything, it all just kind of happened. So my whole life, I have been a creative person, always working on various different projects, and I did study fashion business. So those are two things that I've always been interested in. But I kind of found a way to make that work for me, because for a while I was like, why did I study this? I'm so confused. Like, this is not where I resonate at all. But now I've really been able to utilize all the skills that I learned in my degree through what I'm doing now. So an easy way of putting it is I create metaphysical tools. So the two main things that I create and I make are healing wands and feather smudge fans. So both of those things really came through to me without really any prior awareness to it. So I've mastered Reiki. I studied that about 3 years ago. So I do have an understanding of how energy works and how to be like the conduit for energy. And when I combined the information that I got in the forest with the information that I had about energy healing, these healing wands really came to be. And it's really just an extension of your intention of that healing energy that's coming through to you. And it also helps to direct that. So I like to use them to scan my body to find areas that I might feel are a little bit blocked or feel a little weird. And I just really use the healing wand to direct that energy, to move it into places within my body that I feel like need it.
Oh, nice.
And, then I've also started creating other things, and it's all kind of under the umbrella of Cyclical in Nature. And that name came to be because I feel like when I find a feather or I find a beautiful piece of wood or a stick, it speaks to me and I see so much beauty in it. And I want other people to understand the beauty that I see in it by giving it a different life form. So having it take on a different life cycle by it was once just a feather or it was once just a stick, it now has a new form of life and it goes to live on in other people's lives.
So, that's amazing. It reminds me actually of one of our other listeners who I actually think was on the last Posse episode, Callie Blake, who's been just taking, like, she found this like animal carcass in the woods. It was just completely decomposed, and she took all the bones and cleaned them up at home. And then she started making like awesome jewelry out of them and like really blessing them. And like, I don't know. I just think the concept of like taking nature and really repurpose. I love that. And I love the name of the company, the business. It's amazing, an amazing visual. And where can people, do you have a website, or where can people find the wands and the smudge fans?
Yeah, so I do have a website. It's www.cyclicalinnature.com, and cyclical is CYCLICAL. And I also do post a lot on Instagram for the business, and that's cyclical.in.nature.
Awesome. Yeah, everyone go check that out. I'm gonna check it out after this because I'm super intrigued. And well, so here's a question that I like to ask everyone who's on this segment. What's one thing that you think would benefit every P head to know or understand as they continue on their own journey?
Yeah, I mean, I would say to find at least one thing that brings you pure joy and to do it as much as possible. And, you know, I feel like the true essence of this life on earth, besides all the lessons that we came to learn, is just to enjoy the ride. So, you know, we all find healing in different ways. And I think it's important to explore and to find whatever it is that's waiting for you. And, you know, like for me, it was the forest, but for other people, it could be various different things. But I do believe that there's at least one thing out there that can truly bring joy, healing, and peace to people's lives.
Mm. Do you think that everyone has like something specific, like you're talking about the forest, or do you think it's ever changing? Or what's your take on how you find that thing?
I would just say by exploring. I know an issue that, you know, myself included, but a lot of people deal with is thinking that they have to be perfect at everything. So it's like, especially with art or any type of creativity, people who identify as not being creative or not being an artist don't even usually try to be creative or to be an artist.
Yeah.
And I think that happens because fear of failure or not being good enough. But what I've really learned in everything that I've pursued is to just have fun with it and to not do it to show people or to prove to anyone that you're great at it, just to do it for fun. And in exploring different things for fun, I found so many things that have brought so much joy to my life. And I'm not great at them. I'm not the best, but they make me happy. So to me, that's all that really matters.
That's great advice. Just do it for fun. Cause yeah, that's exactly what you said is so true. Like I used to draw and paint quite a bit and I was really good at it. And then in the past couple of years, I would pick it up again and I would just immediately start judging myself that it wasn't good enough. And then I would get frustrated and put it down. And I caught myself, you know, in the thought process of, well, who is it not good enough for? Well, it's not good enough to show anyone. It's not good enough to, you know, show people that I did this. And it's, you know, I think definitely removing that element really frees up your creativity, because those are barriers, those are boundaries that we put around things, like that things have to look specific ways. And the greatest artists of all time, right? The greatest influencers of all times are people who did something that other people said wasn't art, right? Who other people said was out of the boundaries. So it really is about like removing those boundaries and just running with it. And I think that's great advice. So thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, so do you have any, you know, we love stories here on this show. So do you have any fun or inspiring manifestation stories or synchronicity stories or anything fun you'd like to share?
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely feel like manifestation and synchronicities are a big part of my life. And I know most positive head listeners as well. But a story that I feel called to share that's involving feathers, since that's my thing. So when I was a little kid, I was able to see spirits, and I called them angels at the time. And I also found it very scary. So when I would see a transparent figure in a random place, it scared me, and I blocked it out and pushed away that ability my entire life. And recently I felt this want to explore it more, and I wanted it back. Even though it still kind of scared me, I just felt like it was something that I needed to heal within myself and to tap back into. And I was on a spiritual retreat a while ago, and I spent some time like manifesting for this ability to come back to me. And I was sharing that with a friend who I had just met, and what she told me was, it's possible to ask spirit to show up for you in ways that don't scare you. And, that was very simple advice, but it was exactly what I needed to hear in that moment. And it really opened me up to realizing that, I could have this ability back without it scaring me or being too much for me to handle at that time. So to really think that I had control in it really helped to shift things inside me. And then the following day, when I wasn't thinking about it, I let this go. I was sitting alone at a picnic table, and when I looked down, there was this bright blue feather sitting right next to me. And I knew that it hadn't been there when I had originally sat down. And I love feathers. I usually keep them if I find them at cool times, but I had nowhere to keep it. So I was just going to leave it behind. But I had this voice come through to me that was like, you need to pick it up. Like it basically yelled at me and was like, keep it, you need that. And I was like, whoa, okay. Like definitely. I wanted to anyway, so I guess I will. And then a little while after, I joined a circle of people who were waiting to receive a healing from a shaman. And my friend, who I had been talking to the other day about this very issue, was in the center of the circle receiving a healing from the shaman. And in the corner of my eye, I saw a butterfly. And then I felt this energy wash over me, and the butterfly traveled over to a blue jay in a tree above the circle. And the same voice came through to me and said, "This is Anne Marie's father. And I left that feather for you to give to her. And I want you to tell her that I am here for her and watching over her. And I'm witnessing her healing. Please tell her." And a part of me couldn't believe it, but I didn't question it. I just listened. And I went over and I sat next to Anne Marie and when she came back, and I told her that her father was there and he wanted me to give her the feather. And she broke down crying, and her friend leaned over to me and told me that her father had passed away and he now comes to her as a blue jay. And when I heard that, I just received major chills because I was just listening to my intuition, and I didn't even know that her father had passed away. So that was my first like manifestation story of getting this ability back in a way that didn't scare me.
Wow, that's awesome. And when was that?
This was in July.
Wow.
So very recently.
So how's it been since then? Like, have you been opening up more to it, or?
Yeah, so I don't think I've had as incredible of an experience as that moment, but I do now live in a space where I'm open to it, and I'll definitely feel energies or spirits around me. And I haven't seen anything materialize like I did when I was little, but I'm definitely open to it now, and I'm not scared of it like I was in the past. So I know that more will unfold as time goes on.
Definitely.
Which is exciting.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. That's so beautiful, that story. Especially because I've been really paying attention to animals lately, like animals and insects. And I have like a very special connection with dragonflies lately, but also butterflies. And they seem to get closer and closer to me. And recently I was having a really hard day, and I like walked outside and I saw like at least 40 to 50 dragonflies everywhere I looked. They were so thick that I couldn't even see through. And as I was just staring there with my mouth open, like, I can't believe how many dragonflies are just out here in this field right next to my apartment. One came up behind me and then buzzed me on the lips. Like, it came right to the side of my mouth and was like, bzzz, and like, it was like it felt like I got a shock, but like a good shock, to my lips. And I was like, what, and I keep having these very up close and personal interactions with either butterflies or dragonflies or things like that. And every time I have one of those interactions, cause like I've never seen a spirit, and I think I've been, everyone in most people in my life are very, very open or are opening up, and I'm a very analytical person. And so I've always been, it's been harder for me to receive. But it's like every time something happens with one of those, like a butterfly or a dragonfly, it feels like I get this feeling like that's a message for me, or like that's someone, that's something it just feels like more than just an insect, it's more than just like a dragonfly or butterfly. Feels more. And
yeah, I totally understand.
yeah. And so I like that story because it really like makes me, it really illustrates that and gives more credence to that. So, well, that is awesome. Leah, this has been really lovely talking to you. I feel like you have such a calming energy, and I'm really interested to see where this forest therapy guidance goes, and interested to keep talking to you. Is there anything before we go, anything else that you feel called to share? Or
Yeah, no, I'm so happy this all happened. And, I'd really just say for anyone listening, just to keep taking moments to connect with little things in nature. Like you said, like fireflies, dragonflies, butterflies, like they all have messages for us. It's just tuning into their energy, and so much can unfold from there. And also, anything is possible. Like even a few months ago, I would have never reached out to do this interview. Yeah. I'm not someone who enjoys being on the spotlight or feeling like I have to speak about things. It's all been stuff that's made me really nervous in the past, and I put off reaching out to you for a long time, but I overcame that, and here I am talking to you. So
yeah, and
that's right.
Quite beautifully as well. You never would have guessed that you don't enjoy this, because I feel like you speak very beautifully and naturally, and yeah, that you hopefully you'll be doing more of this, because I think you have some healing to bring just from speaking and sharing. So thank you for reaching out, and thank you for listening to your intuition. I'm so glad that we connected and that you are on this segment now. So thank you. And for anyone else listening who is in the same boat as Leah, or has been pondering reaching out, but has rationalized out of it, I'll tell you that like so many people who've been on this show and this segment have said the exact same thing to me. And after they were on, it opened a lot of things up for them. I think just because, like you said, it's kind of an acceptance, and it's an expansion into a new part of you, a new aspect of you. And I have made some of the best friendships just from interviewing people on this show. So if you're thinking about reaching out but you haven't yet, why don't you just take this as your wake up call? Why don't you just take this as your sign to just reach out? Just do it. What have you got to lose?
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah, just do it. Hashtag just do it. All right, Leah. Well, this was beautiful. If any of you want to reach out to Leah again, contact again. She is at cyclicalinnature.com or cyclical.in.nature on Instagram. Is that right?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Well, awesome, Leah. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And as Brandon likes to say, journey well.
Thank you. You too, Alexa.
That's it for this week's episode. If you're a listener with a story to share and are interested in being featured on a future episode of this special series, you can email me at alexa@positivehead.com. Also, if you're craving more consciousness elevating content, be sure to check out Gaia, which is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web, where you can stream an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. As you all hear Brandon constantly say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to journey deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place we know of to do it. Period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. Otherwise, tune in next Friday for another P-Head Posse episode. And until then, as Brandon always says, journey well.